I've sat up here many times, but this is my very first time to speak here. And it works out, I think, fairly well that Mark's on the plane to Chicago to Rotary headquarters, and I have the privilege of speaking here and being with you tonight on my own. And before I commence my remarks about the Rotary Foundation, I would like to pay a tribute to the Rotary Club of Birmingham and to the Rotaract Club of Birmingham. And for those of you who may not be as familiar with these two clubs, you may not be aware that when you are in the rare position to help plan for the International Assembly, as Mark and I were last year, or to plan ahead for the Rotary Convention in Honolulu next summer, you have the privilege of thinking, what Rotary Club in the world, what Rotaract Club in the entire world do we want to feature for the good they're doing in the world, for how they're using the funds of the Rotary Foundation? And Mark and I had that privilege. And so at the International Assembly last year, we featured the project of the Rotary Club of Birmingham, Alabama, in working to eradicate cervical cancer in Sri Lanka. And so I applaud your efforts for this. Thank you so much. And at this next coming assembly, I believe one of your Rotaractors, one of the young women is going to be on the program, and I know that several of our Rotaractors here have spoken at the International Convention before. And next summer in Honolulu, we will once again feature, of all the Rotary clubs in the world, the Rotary Club of Birmingham, Alabama, and your remarkable efforts in Sri Lanka. Now, this evening, each one of us is renewing our commitment to the Rotary Foundation. And the question may be asked, why? Rotarians and those within our ranks as part of the family of Rotary, we are connected by our passion for the good works accomplished by Rotarians throughout the world. As the current First Lady of Rotary, I have a front row seat, literally a front row seat in business class to fly around the world many, many times. But as part of that front row view of the impact being made by Rotarians all around the world, I am more and more convinced that Rotary is just making a tremendous impact on the world. But as a young woman growing up in Decatur, Alabama, where I still reside, such a journey would be a fairy tale. As a high school student, my primary goal was to see the world beyond Decatur, Alabama. I want you to hear that. My goal was to see the world beyond Decatur, Alabama. I felt out of step in the Alabama of that time, with its emphasis on football and barbecue. Despite great exposure to Auburn football in my father's hometown of Auburn, with my cousins who were sitting right over there, and to Big Bob Gibson's barbecue in my hometown of Decatur. At a time when the greatest decision for a young woman was to decide on her china pattern, and maybe her silver pattern, I did not yet know my career path. But I knew that the world illustrated in the color photos of our full encyclopedia set, that world was out there somewhere, and I wanted to reach it. I wanted to have a lovely set of china and silver, but I wanted a diverse group of people sitting around that table when my time came. My first step in that journey to see the world beyond Decatur, Alabama, was to attend and graduate from Agnes Scott College. Helen Robin, you were just a few years ahead of me there, as we talked about earlier. Agnes Scott was then, and remains now, a college for young women in Decatur, Georgia. As if my arms were stretched between the two Decaturs, Decatur, Alabama, and Decatur, Georgia. But at that time, Decatur, Alabama was feeling provincial and close. The other, Decatur, Georgia, feeling international and broad. As a double major in art and English, I was particularly drawn to the words and to the arts of other cultures. For 1 quarter only, a course was offered in the art of the continent of Africa. I can still remember the wonder of looking at pictures of African handicrafts carved from wood. Who could imagine actually traveling to such an exotic continent? And that class meant enough to me that even today, I have that book from that class. And years later, I found myself in Nigeria, and with our host, I had this book. And I opened the pages, and I said, look, where is that made? And he said, I'll show you. Turned around, and 2 hours later, I was there, seeing the world that I could only imagine as a young woman at Agnes Scott College. After Agnes Scott, my next step was Vanderbilt Law School. Having chosen Vanderbilt, so I still had options beyond the state of Alabama. As a second-year law student, I selected a class on public international law. Now, Judy, that class was different than I expected. Public international law means it's the law of oil wells out in the ocean, and it really wasn't quite what I had in mind. But in that seminar class of just 22 students, I met a fellow classmate who had been in the other section our first year. And that classmate was Mark Daniel Maloney, a young man from a farming background who had studied medieval history at Harvard while managing the football team. That football, it was still getting in there a little bit. Both of us were interested in the world beyond our childhood homes. Although he had imagined that he would return to his home, and who knew, perhaps enter politics. Our first date, as it happened, was to a Hawaiian luau, an event that foreshadowed Mark and I would invite the world to join us for the 2020 Rotary Convention in Honolulu. Who knew? We were soon engaged and wrestling with the question as to where to settle. The final decision was whether to join my father, former Decatur Mayor J. Gilmer Blackburn, in his law practice in Decatur, or to stay in Nashville. Well, my dad took Mark for a drive. That's how things happened back then. I was not invited to that con. And then in what seems like a blink of an eye, we returned to Decatur after Mark received a master's degree in taxation from New York University, a degree my father also had earned. And now, for many years, we have lived across from Delano Park, from my high school. From our front porch, you can see Decatur High School. So close, and yet so far. While we were in New York, Mark and I quickly connected with Glenn Estes Jr., also a student in the LLM program, and his wife Terry, who remembered that we had been to Winnetonka together when we were in the 4th grade. Small world. And throughout the year of 1979-1980, we heard about the commitment of Glenn Estes Sr. and his wife Mary. While Glenn was serving that year as district governor of then Rotary District 686. We heard about the club visits and how they were making their way around the district. Who would have imagined that Mark would follow Glenn as district governor and as president of Rotary International. And how remarkable it is for me to follow the gentle and beautiful Mary Estes as the First Lady of Rotary. Such a lovely role model. Now this evening in my home state, I consider it important to emphasize that, as I have learned, we can each make a difference in our communities and in the world from right here in Alabama. As I can now appreciate with the hindsight of 40 years. The state of Alabama is the perfect place from which to connect and see the world. This is the message I share each year with a group of Harvard students who participate in the alternative spring break trip to Decatur, Alabama, with a journey down here to Birmingham while they are here. And my friend Jean Shanks is very involved with that with me. This service trip began when our oldest daughter, Phyllis, was a sophomore at Harvard, and our younger daughter, Margaret, followed her there 2 years later. And it has happened each year except for one since then. As my Rotary Club of Decatur Daybreak is looking forward to the 18th trip next spring, we take pleasure in knowing that the longest running alternative spring break trip at Harvard takes place right here in Alabama. Why do they keep coming back? Why are they drawn to the state of Alabama? Of course, part of it is a cultural exchange. And often we have students who are from around the world. Often the cultural exchange is just because somebody is from Massachusetts and they've never been south of Virginia. But it is important, more than ever, that our young people have the opportunity to see another part of the world or the United States. And for students drawn to public service, the state of Alabama is a perfect match. Why? Because we here in Alabama, we know the value of paying our civic rent. Because we here in Alabama, we connect. And we connect on many levels. Because we here in Alabama know what it means to have home cities with connections. These students, every year they say, you have a real hometown. People know each other. Connections are made. It is no surprise to those of us lucky enough to live in this great state that we have such strong Rotary and Rotaract clubs. We connect with each other in natural ways that people of all ages appreciate and value. Just as was mentioned earlier about how these young men who perform around the world and they're noticed not just for their music, but how they interact and for their manners. Are we perfect? Well, of course not. Do we have room to grow? Of course we do. But we in the state of Alabama continue to learn from our trials and tribulations. And I am very proud that for the 4th time in Rotary's history, there is an Alabamian as president of Rotary International. And for those of us who made those of you who made the district trip to the Rotary headquarters a few weeks ago, you saw that outside the Rotary headquarters for this Rotary year flies the flag of the state of Alabama. When it is an international president, the flag of the country of that president flies. But when it is an American president, the flag of their state flies, because the American flag flies all the time. And I think that's pretty special. And since Mark began his term as president-elect and president of Rotary, we have certainly traversed this wonderful planet connecting with Rotarians. More than once, we will circumvent the globe, crisscrossing between continents, arching between hemispheres, moving between seasons as we travel with the winds. While my experiences as a young woman only stretched between the Decaturs of Alabama and Georgia, my experiences of today are of such magnitude that they can just take your breath away. Mark and I are set to travel almost every airline of this world. And I even know which security video at the beginning is my favorite. I've taken a video. And over the course of this journey, we will have met Rotarians from all over the world with travel. Now this is just as president-elect and president. It doesn't count earlier travel. We will have met Rotarians in Peru, Nigeria, Germany, Jordan, Indonesia, Uruguay, Ukraine, Guatemala, Brazil, New Zealand, Australia, Poland, Argentina, Italy, Japan. And this Friday, I will meet Mark in Los Angeles, and we will head for the next leg to go to Japan, Panama. This is in one trip. Japan, Panama, Korea, Vietnam, India, and Turkey. Then after the first of the year, we will be going to Egypt, Portugal, Sri Lanka, England, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Albania, Kosovo, Greece, Zimbabwe, Nepal, Malaysia, Rwanda, Philippines, China, and more. Isn't that remarkable? For the girl from Decatur who wanted to see the world? Wow. And in between these international trips, we have witnessed the connection made through great Rotarians across the United States in locales such as Marshall, Texas, and Kansas City, Missouri. You see, the beauty of Rotary is that Rotarians and Rotaractors around the world share so much in common. They and we share the passion of service, the heartbeat of the Rotary Foundation. In northern Japan, the Rotarians thanked us for all that Rotarians had done for their communities in the aftermath of the tsunami and the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster. We stood outside the Yukado Elementary School, the building left as a reminder of the disaster naming, and the naming town or the city in Fukushima Prefecture. I have to really work at that. The empty, damaged building, the only remnant of what had been a bustling community of close to 20,000 people. The city was struck not only by the tsunami, but it was also evacuated as a result of the nuclear disaster being directly downwind from the power plant. For 5 years, no one could go into that area because it still had the aftermath of that nuclear exposure. But we also planted a tree while we were there in a children's play school nearby, a visual reminder that the future brings promise to those who have lost so much. The Rotarians, along with the governor of the prefecture, equivalent to the governor of our state, welcomed us with great joy and appreciation of all that Rotarians have accomplished in the renewal of this area with the financial support of the Rotary Foundation. In Guatemala, the Rotarians showed us how much their efforts provide the safety net for so many, with a government unable to meet all the needs of its citizens. In the town of Zumpango, Guatemala, we were welcomed with energetic school children at a school in which the Rotarians had completely transformed the water, sanitation, and hygiene of the school, all done with grants from the Rotary Foundation. There was now a source for water, good restrooms for the students, and multiple hand washing stations. And the students sang a song, and they practiced for us while we were there, and they all sang a song and washed their hands. It was great. Also in Supango, we were guests at the nutrition center in which Rotarians had supplied the foods for machinery to make soy milk. And then, with the byproducts of the soy milk, they made food items for the women to sell. And the food items were delicious. Someone had to taste those cookies, and they were very good. But through Rotary, we as Rotarians made a difference for that community. And then once again in Guatemala, and the picture behind me is of the setting of one of the natural disasters there. We stood in the ruins of El Rodeo, one of the villages at the foot of the Fuego volcano in Guatemala, one of the communities most significantly impacted by the eruption, which sprang from the side of the volcano, resulting in miles of lava as the air filled with smoke and ash. Now I want you to think about this. Everyone in that picture with us, they're all Rotarians. They have their Rotary shirts on. And there was actually a Rotary meeting somewhere else in Guatemala. Let's say it was the district meeting. Could have been right here. And as they were leaving the district meeting, they started to hear the news on their radios about this volcano. They didn't go home to listen to more news. Each one of those Rotarians drove to the site of the disaster. And they were already trained, many of them were already paramedics or, they were trained to be there. And they made a difference. And for the local people that lived in that village, they could have left. They had enough warning. More people could have been saved. But they viewed, and have always viewed, the volcano to be their friend. And the volcano has been known to erupt on a generational basis, so that each generation, their story was marked by that eruption of the volcano. But this one was different. As I mentioned, it erupted from the side. They didn't see it coming from the top. And so they were overtaken by the lava, and so many people were killed. And the Rotarians not only were there as first responders, they were there afterward to make a difference in a more long-term manner, which is what Rotarians do. And so we visited a school, and in the school is the Jose Martin School in Escuintla, Guatemala. And afterward, it had served as the home to many people. Just as when Katrina came along years ago now, if you remember, there were those public buildings that were the home to many people. And this school was a home to many people who had lost their homes under all that lava. But it left the school a wreck. So Rotarians received grants from the Rotary Foundation, and they rebuilt and painted and refreshed that school, and they have vocational programs there, and they were quite excited to welcome us there, all looking towards the future. Now, last year in Surat, India, we returned to a project that Mark had helped dedicate in 2004. And I think this is something else that's important about the Rotary Foundation, as many of you know. The Rotary Foundation doesn't look for projects that are just one and done. Maybe we're going to just do something quickly, but we're not going to go back to see if it's sustainable. The Rotary Foundation looks to make a long-term impact. And when Mark was at this village of Niol, outside of Surat, India, 15 years ago, and I wasn't on that trip, But when he was there, it was great excitement. They dedicated a permanent potable water facility. This little village had never had running water, and the Rotary Foundation made it possible. And to me, what was remarkable was to go back 15 years later, and what had been just this very dusty village those years ago was now a bustling, successful community, thanks to the investment of the Rotary Foundation a year ago. It was spotless. The facility, maybe they had freshly painted it for us, it's possible, but still, it was in wonderful shape. And it was so exciting to see what the difference was made by the Rotary Foundation. Now, you are welcome to join me on my Instagram or on my Facebook. I have gone onto social media to help share this journey. But in help sharing this journey, I've also shared your journey. I've seen Michael Stone's little boy dressed up in the tiger outfit for Halloween. I watched the Rotary Club of Birmingham. I'm now part of your group to watch the activities of your club. I've seen how the local Rotary clubs in our district, you're out there everywhere. You may be picking up trash, you may be going to a senior citizen center. It's great. I never thought I would be as excited to see all those connections. So I can talk forever. I could come up here with 100 slides and not repeat one of them, of what we have seen. But what I can say, I've been to a place, I have the opportunity to sit in a spot. I am one of 2 people and 1.2 million plus people around the world that I'm getting to see all the good that the Rotary Foundation is doing. And we as Rotarians and Rotaractors, or supportive members of the family of Rotary, we are making a difference in our 6 areas of focus that Bill mentioned earlier. And I want to mention once again the eradication of polio. And a reminder, who was the first Rotarian to lead the effort against polio? Leslie Wright. That's right. For the Rotaractors, I want you to remember that the first head of that effort worldwide was from the Rotary Club of Birmingham, Alabama, Leslie Wright. And I had the privilege to know Dr. Wright and Lola Wright years ago, and that's one of the legacies that you have. Now, because of the heart and soul and strength established by the regular contact among Rotarians and Rotaractors and the family of Rotary, we all have, and we particularly have in the state of Alabama, we have the passion to serve today. We have that passion that's given shape, it is given voice, it becomes compassion, and it will make a difference for those who are in need today, but also for those who remain in need tomorrow. And that is a reminder of why we are here this evening. It is to refresh our passion for the good work of the Rotary Foundation. It's to learn about others' passion. And I am very pleased, Philippe was sharing with me how you are working, particularly in the city of Birmingham, among the Rotary clubs here to learn about each other's projects. And we're here to educate ourselves on why the world is a better place because of the Rotary Foundation. The Rotary Foundation is the heartbeat of Rotary. And through the Rotary Foundation, we use our head, we use our hearts and our hands to do good as Rotary connects the world. Thank you.